radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Welcome, Fade to Black. Today is Thursday, September 21st, 2023. I'm Jimmy Church. Tonight, Linda Moulton Howe is with us. She is back, and I want you to help support everything that we do around here and get yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. The links are below. Everything is autographed, and it includes shipping. You have choices of 2 shirts and 2 ways to get them. The links are below. We've got 5 shows that we're doing this week, in addition to the news and everything that I do with Christina Gomez and all the other stuff. A lot of production this week with a big team behind it. So help us bring all of this information to you. It's really fun, and we really appreciate it. So the links are below. Tonight, Linda Moulton Howe is with us, and I've kind of framed this show. I've just called it Earthfiles this week. That's it. I'm just calling it Earthfiles because it's going to be another amazing conversation. We're going to be talking about contact, going to talk about disclosure, what's going on in our community, what's going on in her world. So much to go through, but to keep the tradition going, I will just say this. Ms. Howe has traveled to Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, England, Norway, France, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, Turkey, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, Australia, Japan, Canada, Mexico, the Yucatan, Puerto Rico. All of that for her research and productions. And you know where to go, earthfiles.com. That's where I get all of my secret stuff that I share with you every day. I get it from Linda. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only. There she is, Linda Moulton Howe. Linda, good evening, young lady. How you doing?
Great.
You look amazing. You look amazing.
Thank you. I think that life right now on Earth is giving us 2 pieces of energy. Depending upon which news you're listening to, you either want to crawl away and cry and sob and ask for help, or you feel like we're going through a bumpy road. And on the other side, if humanity can just stick together a little bit longer, that we will finally get to a place where humans begin to look at each other, as the agape Greeks used to say. Mm-hmm. If you can look at another being and you see and you feel not only yourself, but your soul, because you are with another being as yourself. How could you kill them? How could you have wars? It's a whole different way of looking at humanity on Earth if you say every being you would see as yourself and your soul. And that, to me, is part of what may be the challenge, and what for those of us who interview a lot of people who are in what is called the abduction syndrome, we have heard stories about the tall whites, not grays, not others, but tall whites. And this afternoon, I had about a 2-hour discussion with a person in the state of Texas. That's big enough, and that's as far as I'll go. Mm-hmm. Who is a remote viewer, has had interactions with non-humans, lives in an area where he is aware, as a human living on the Earth right now in September of 2023, of 6.5 to 8.5 foot, white hair, white skin, white. And they are there, and he knows about it, and so do other people. That's not the only place. I have interviewed a group of young men in Taos just last year, and one of them had called me almost in a panic and said, Linda, we were over on the golf course in Taos, and he had to be 9 feet tall, was wearing something that seemed to flow in the body. And we were maybe the length of a football field from this moving person. So where they had been playing golf, imagine you're sort of on a hill and you're looking down, and about 300 feet away, there is a sidewalk that is coming into this golf course.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on that sidewalk. I talked with both of them, the two eyewitnesses together. They said it was moving, and they were trying to say, imagine that you're seeing long, long arms swinging and very rapidly moving, and that everything that they were seeing was all white. And that's where the two friends stood. What are we looking at? After I did that interview, it was probably about 6 weeks after that, another incident comes up in New Mexico, and I am talking with them, and I start hearing a story that they're unfolding about rumors of friends who live in Taos, that if you go out of town to the southeast into an area where the land starts growing up into more mountainous region, that tall whites have a base there. Now, this is not for a movie. This is not for TV. These are actual discussions in the present 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
where I never heard people talking about tall whites until I think it was the last 2 years. Doesn't mean they weren't reported at some point before, but something seems to be shifting. If you go back to World War II and the beginning as it unfolded into the 50s and the 60s, everything was grays. You didn't hear of anything else. Suddenly, we're in a planet that feels every day like something horrible could be unleashed. And now people living in Taos, living in Texas, they're talking about tall whites.
What's interesting about that, though, okay, is I have a sculpture here. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. And this is a sculpture of a gray with a set of golf clubs. So there you go. So it is possible. It is possible that tall whites are pretty good on the front nine. I'm just saying. Did they
they may enjoy golf, but the bigger box is they have been described by people who have been terrified to talk about them.
Right.
And I'm now referencing people that I know that work in what I would call military aerospace areas. And these are their words, not mine. They are spiritual. They are very strict. They don't play any loose rules. They have family organization. You could never cross a line of the tall whites and without risking that they would electrically stop your heart. All done in fairness, because they say, as I've understood, not just Charles Hall, who has written the most about the tall whites. Charles Hall and I had a discussion about this years ago, that his first night, it was Charles Hall who was in security at a place near Indian Wells, where allegedly deep underground in that Area 51, we'll call it region, that where Charles Hall was going to be assigned and some other people on security, the tall whites are allegedly have a territory that is underground. It is theirs. No human can go in. And that was an agreement that we made. And that allegedly they have helped us in many ways. And this is such an interesting story because it raises the whole issues of compassion between life forms without understanding each other's rules. You could say the same thing goes on every day between humans as well. And Charles Hall told me that he's standing in his spot. It was 4 a.m. There was another security person, like on a diagonal from Charles Hall. The area that the tall whites would come and go is here. Not very far distance, but here. Here's Hall, here's a security, and here. And they hear the sound of something like a car or a truck. And it pulls up, and a new, never seen before, new security person gets out and does the unthinkable to the men who are there and have been trained, including Charles Hall, who's telling me this story. The man who is showing up at 4 a.m. for security, brand new, goes on a diagonal crossing the territorial zone where the security must stay at certain areas, never to get onto the territory of the tall whites.
Mm-hmm.
At exactly that moment, for reasons unknown, a male and a female tall white came up with children.
Right.
And they had 2 children in front of them. And maybe they did this because the security person showed up. Who knows? They are approaching. Charles Hall is watching. The man is coming on a diagonal and dropped dead. And the explanation was that the tall whites have that ability. They can interfere with the electrical functioning of a heart. And that they warn and say that this is what they will do if you approach their children. And I think that this is a fascinating mind go through this, that if we are finally in the part of a century where the whole revolution is going to take place, and we are serious as a world species to have something like the tall whites and the Nordics introduced to us, Earth is still having a hard time getting along with itself. The races of the Earth are always in tension with each other.
Didn't Charles say, and it's actually specifically about that moment too as well, but he's made this comment before where he was observing what he thought was teaching going on, right? Where the adults had the kids there and he felt like he was interrupting a school session. And
many times, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But this one was lethal. And the whole thing that I never had thought about this until this discussion with Charles Hall.
Right.
That it was legal. It had been agreed. They did exactly what they said they would do. If there was a violation, that's the strict part. And we lost a security guard. Right.
Well, my point that I'm agreeing with you, but my point was that I think that the adults were showing the children the boundary and consequences. That's what I'm suggesting.
And that may be true. And whatever it was, it has ricocheted inside of my mind and soul for a long time, that you could have another intelligence from another solar system, no matter how many light years, who would be able to communicate with the human mind because maybe they were involved 278 million years ago with genetic experiments on the Earth. But whatever it is, it's realizing that the difference between relating to the universe, relating to consciousness, relating to matter, relating to non-matter, between conscious life forms could be so radically different that whereas the tall whites allegedly mean us no harm, they really seem to embrace the idea of soul and consciousness as what they protect, and that violation to them would be any, not just any life form that approached their children, and that they remain strict about that. And the demonstration of stopping a heart is we mean this, but they don't mean harm to us as a species, that in fact, they are trying to help us. And that is the, if you want to call it, the multifaceted relationship challenge between something like Homo sapien and the tall whites. I find it fascinating. I wish they could be introduced. It might put a stop to some of the stupid wars on Earth. And somehow what we're talking about in these first minutes on this September 24th, it's like that is the whole challenge of the future timeline going into the next century. We're having to move out from Earth. Elon Musk maybe is going to get humans on Mars. Once we start doing that, we aren't just earthbound life. We are moving into the cosmos. And all of, as I understand it, there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of different life forms. It makes sense. There was a statistic that was given on a TV program last week that just stopped me in my tracks. And it was somebody saying, do you know that mathematicians have actually taken what the population of the Earth is now over X it was Y, and W it was Z, meaning they went through a time span. How much increase? How many estimated stars? How many estimated galaxies? And the estimated number of galaxies is 3 trillion. And that each of the galaxies might have another 2 or 3 trillion suns.
Correct.
So how many, if you have the math that we know so far, how many life planets might there be?
Well, that's a number. That's a number with 21 zeros after it.
The answer was blissfully short and
What?
really stopped me in my tracks.
What's that?
The mathematical answer to how many, if 3 trillion are there, how many would have advanced high civilization life? And the answer was mathematically 3 trillion.
That's a smaller number. That's only 1,000. That's 1/1,000,000th of a percent.
Well,
of 3 trillion times 3 trillion.
3 trillion planets with intelligent life.
I would say that's maybe in our Milky Way. See, this is what is crazy about that statement, and I read the same thing that you're referring to here. The number is so frigging big, Linda, that we can't wrap our head around it. That's the answer. Whatever the biggest number is you can think of, add a couple of more digits, and that's where we're at. It's that big. It's a huge number.
Humans have got to go through the doorway. We are not alone in this universe. And until that happens, and we are all on the same page that we are not the unique life form, that we are going to be introduced to Nordics and tall whites and grays, and a lot of grays that are artificial intelligence. They were created as AI, whether they were biological cyborgs or entirely artificial. The grays are largely AI. Everybody I know now concedes that. So the tall whites and I understand, I've been told 9 species of the Nordics, the blonde, the blue-eyed, the white skin that so many other people have talked about in the last century or two. And that those 9, only 3 are friendly to us, leaving 6 what is their allegiance to? And now we get into this huge story that the government probably feels that humans can't handle this, and therefore we constantly are barraged with what I call political braiding or sewing, trying to keep humanity from all of the big headlines. We're not alone. There's 3 trillion possible planets. We already know about X, Y, and Z. that are 40 light years. They have high civilization. We know it. And part of me is confused about why, after World War II and Hitler talking about the blonde, blue-eyed ETs from Aldebaran who were helping him do World War II, why, going into 2023, why would our government feel that we can't, as a human species, handle being introduced to a whole bell-shaped curve of friendly, neutral, and hostile non-humans? It's just
that's right. And I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if the world gives a crap anymore. Where that I don't think anybody's going to be shocked into crazy town with these kinds of revelations. I don't see it now. Maybe when the Rand Corporation or the Brookings Institute and Condon and those other things happened, we were in a different headspace. But today, I'm not so sure. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, talk about huge news. Like the biggest news ever was released yesterday. And that is archaeologists in Zambia just discovered an intact house.
Yes.
That was dated to 476,000 years old. Right now, and the crazy part about it is it wasn't a couple of sticks that were leaning on each other. Right? No, this was cut, interlocked 90-degree corners with tool marks. Now, that's 200,000 years before Orthodox academia is trying to convince us that Homo sapiens sapien appeared. 200,000 years before that, where the assumption, the dogma, Linda, as you know, is that Homo sapiens sapien was nomadic. Right? That's it. That's it. And just wandering the earth. As it turns out, they were homemakers.
Well, but the thing
that's
that
crazy.
is left out of this story, why is the assumption that the makers of this have to be Homo sapiens sapien? No, it's absolutely not necessary.
Again,
at all.
it
There
doesn't matter,
have
does
been
it?
all kinds of humanoid civilizations on this planet,
Right.
and we, Homo sapien, Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, we are supposed to go back only 2 million years in DNA to Homo erectus in Africa. Meanwhile, all around, they're discovering other things. The DIA guy that I talked to in December of 1999 said our government had proof that 278 million years ago, 278 million, that there was that there have been genetic manipulation by extraterrestrial civilizations, multiple, some collaborating, some in conflict, that began genetic experimentation on this planet. The DIA analyst told me essentially Earth is a laboratory, and it has been used as a laboratory by half a dozen species for at least 278 million years. Some have a vested interest in Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien because they were tweaking us into existence.
Sure.
But that there are all other kinds of species. He went into marine life, into all sorts of things. And that is the closest description to 2023 of abductees who are becoming quite sophisticated. And that the concept of Earth as a laboratory is what they have been given as well when they have been in abductions. And they are sometimes shown images of the Earth that we don't fully understand what a perfect laboratory it is, and that is what so many different non-humans have used Earth for, not just manipulating humanoids, but all kinds of other
things.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why this press release yesterday was like the biggest news as far as history goes,
Yeah.
that's ever been released.
And
it
looking at
just,
the photos, didn't you feel like they looked
Yeah.
absolutely fresh? And I thought, what is this black material
Right.
that they have put that would have lasted for 500,000 years?
500,000 years, and it just came and went. The headlines about the Kardashians are more important, and that's why, Linda, I'm not so sure if any revelations about ET are going to be news. And now, talking about tinkering with us, for a minute at least, I hope. Here's on the 24th, we've got the samples from Bennu are going to be crash landing in Utah. That's a really big deal. What do you think is going to be the headline if these samples, because it'll be the second time officially, where RNA and sugars, the chemistry of the universe that you and I are made of, right, show up again on Bennu? What does that say? And it's a crazy thought, isn't it? That RNA and DNA are just seeding the universe, and it's just the way that it is. That's a really big headline, isn't it?
I won't be surprised at all. I'm expecting that they honed in on that particular asteroid because they already had some information.
Right.
And let's take the last 13.8 billion years when this universe began to come into existence, and that Roger Penrose, when I talked with him about this in 2018, and my first question to him was, what do you think is the source of the singularity? And his beautiful English voice, oh, no, Linda, no singularity. We're in a universe that is an infinite cycle of time. I can hear it now. I've never forgotten that. And he just, wow. And his point of view was that we were not born from this explosion out of nothing. He essentially is saying the infinity of cycles of time is not comprehensible to the human mind. But that was where he came in as a mathematician and as an analyst. And the more I have thought about that, because it really provoked me that day when he began to talk about his vision of the universe. We humans live at the beginning of lives in birth, too short in terms of death. We're like Drosophila flies, to be born and then have an average of 70, 75 years, you're supposed to be gone. And some people, they're just beginning to finally get into some kind of understanding and relationship with the universe.
And then it's over.
So why have we been made this particular version like Drosophila? Drosophila flies are famous in biological laboratories as what they use for studying and manipulating generations of flies, because they are born, die, born, die, born, die, born, die quite quickly. That when I say we are like Drosophila flies, compare to what the tall whites themselves told Charles Hall and others, that they can live to 850 years. And they have explained how. In one of the books or videos that he talked about, that they control the health of every cell of their body. I'm going to say that again because it's hard for us to comprehend.
Right.
It would be like we had medicine and doctors that were focused on maintaining at the highest frequency of the newest tissue of every single cell of each body for 850 years. What happens at the end of that 850 years, I have no idea. But that is information that came about how they sustain and go through the universes and go through galaxies, and that they are cosmic. They're a cosmic species. The idea that you could do that you could control every single cell and keep every single cell. I would say, tall whites, lock me in at 26.
Yeah.
Let me go for 1,000 years exploring the universe, reporting, doing Earthfiles, every solar system, every galaxy. I'm very serious. I would be thrilled.
Would you go? Would you go? Would you take the invitation?
To do that?
Yeah. Yeah, you would do it? You would do it?
Yeah. I can't imagine anything more exciting.
I mean, neither. Just as long as the food is good. If the food is good, though, and they have to have good champagne, right?
Well, I'm assuming that I would have tall whites who were protecting, teaching, helping. There's no possibility that we could go bang from Homo sapiens sapien and Drosophila fly lives to being sustained for 850 years. I don't think you could do that jump cut. I think you would have to have some education. You would have to have some evolutionary transition. But the concept is what I feel it is true. It is exciting. And that the universe, Lou Elizondo and others 2 years ago were saying, when they were first talking, that one of the significant discoveries, by whom they don't say, that the universe itself is conscious. That makes so much sense to me, because I have a feeling, I've always had this feeling, that I sense my soul. I think of it as a plasma that is somehow linked into every one of my cells. That would be tall white thinking as well. And that when I get into a certain frequency, it feels like I can bond, I can call out, I can link into the universe. That's what I think we are supposed to do. I think that is part of the evolutionary track, learning how to this part of us that we consider unseen, and some people think is like a Valentine card, and it's not real. The soul is probably the most important part of us. It is the information gatherer that then keeps contributing to cycles and cycles of information, and that what we are doing on Earth right now is crucial. We are trying to change from a tribal, you can kill your fellow tribe. I think something's happening where we're trying to be pulled out of that into being conscious of the universe, and that in the consciousness of the universe, where the Nag Hammadi in what is called the Protonoia at the end of that very famous and incredible book. When I first read the words, they're like 26, 27 pages from the end of that Nag Hammadi. And it says, the thought that dwells in the light, that is the infinite divine. I still can feel right now this tingle that I felt when I first saw those words on that page. This is truth. The thought that dwells in the light, if you go further and say, this is the infinity of photons, that we are talking about the possibility of having souls that can resonate with the frequency of the universe that is already resonating with every photon that exists in the cycles of infinity, as Roger Penrose put.
And let me jump in there really quick. Penrose, I want to stay on this for a second. Penrose is the way that he frames it, and he's so elegant. And I've read so many of his books, where it is now today, and I never would have thought. Now he's been talking about this for a while now, or alluding to it, and that is maybe there was no Big Bang.
That's what
right?
I meant. That's the singularity.
Yeah,
Singularity is
and
the
right,
Big Bang.
but today that conversation is alive in physics circles, where we've this 13.8 billion and the time that we have based on that, right? Everything is based on that, and then before that there was no time. All of that is kind of going out the window now, and that it is cyclical and it is infinite. And I got to tell you, forever ago, it's a long time, right? That's talk about just think about that, and there isn't really another way to put it. That it's just forever. That's it. That's all. It's forever from now, and it's forever in the past. And that's it. It's just infinite in both directions.
And I want to explore it for 850 years with tall whites that would teach that we could go to all of these different solar systems, see all of the different consciousnesses interacting with the universe. I just can't imagine anything that would be more exciting than reporting from solar systems throughout this universe.
Now, hey, Linda, okay. Now, don't react crazily. Just listen to me for a second. Those are file folders behind you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Turn around, grab the first folder you put your hands on, open it, and tell me what's on the first page. Just random. Just grab a folder. Just grab one. Don't look. Grab one, random. Linda, you're looking. Just grab something. Okay, now come back and sit down. Sit down.
This is a folder. I'm actually doing some work on this, and
it was supposed to be random.
Well, there's an awful lot there, and I have to be careful about what I do publicly with things that I am working on privately. But this one is souls. And what I was just going to say to you is that the most important change that is taking place, I'm working on many different things related to the tall whites and the Nordics and what the government knows and doesn't know and their chess game. But what is settling into me, maybe because I am 81 and will be 82 in January, I don't feel what that number is supposed to be. I have, in some part of me, I've never felt so excited about life.
Right.
And in this, the soul itself is moving rapidly for me from a word in a book, from a concept in a paper. It's as if something in me is getting closer, like something is being woven, and that my energy and my excitement about being alive, letting my soul be able to deliver to the thought that dwells in the light, that I got to see Earth at the moment that it finally moved to the real truth. We are not alone. We are in a conscious universe. This is why prayer works. It's also what you have to be careful about. The opposite of prayer works. And that in some way, it isn't now all of this work I've done for 44 years on UFOs and ETs and animal mutilations and human abductions and the whole issue of black holes being used as transport and the Alcubierre, how the tall whites can go 40 light years in 5 seconds. All of the things that I've heard, that the universe is so radically different than what we have experienced on Earth. But at the same time, it's like getting closer to the soul that I know is part of the fabric that goes on in what Roger Penrose calls the cycle of infinity. time cycling in infinity. And I don't want to leave. I want to continue. That's why I would like the tall whites to say, yeah, we'll upgrade your cells and we will teach you in the universe and I will be able to report. And in a way, I understand the fantasy of it, but at the same time, I feel like something is fundamentally is evolving, that in the end of my 81st revolution around the sun, that I have never, ever wanted to live more, not fade. It's as if something in me senses that whatever that destiny is of the crossfade from matter to the soul and energy, that I'm almost being prepared for something already. And that the tall whites, if they could be introduced to the earth, if they could talk to all humans about what they understand are the cycles of the souls in photons, because photon light, the infinity of light, that's what the thought that dwells in the light is about in the protonoia. It might begin to change Homo sapien from the babies that we are to respecting all life. And that may sound like words that we've heard a billion times, but the truth is, until you actually love, until you actually feel frequencies coming off of another living being that you want to protect, that you want happiness and joy, whether it's your cats or your dogs, your children, it's something you feel and it's visceral. That is growing. And I kept thinking, well, maybe this is what is going to come in this transition, which we must go through. Even JSOC and the Pentagon and everybody don't want to, but we have to, or hang it up.
Well, but see, that's the big question where, so many want to, so aliens are here. We have the announcement, right? Okay. All right. And so many want to ask, well, who are they? Where do they come from? And if that reveal happens, that's not the question to be asked. The question is exactly what you're saying. Who the frig are we? What's our purpose and how do we fit in the grand scheme of things? That's the question, and that's what we have to step into, Linda. And I think it's sooner than later.
I think it's both, because there is something about Homo sapiens sapien that is perhaps unique in all of the experimentation by tall whites and Nordics and grays and praying mantises, and the list goes on and on and on, that they've used the earth for a laboratory for 278 million years from the government's point of view. They have made all kinds of beings. We happen to be the current one. But if the tall whites, who have communicated with several people that I know, I think face to face, not knocked out with hypnosis, they see in us, from everything I have learned, the tall whites see in us what we don't see in each other.
100%.
That the tall whites understand the frequency issue, that a conscious universe means, conscious anything means awareness. Awareness, from our point of view, is having a brain that has all of these interacting molecules with the space that we're in. And that up until now, I think that humanity was divided into male, female, children, babies, hunters, gatherers. We were divided up. and that the divisions work against feeling that you have a soul that is connected to the thought that dwells in the light. It's not old religion. It's not mythology. It is physics. And it is a physics that is involved with eternal evolving life. And it's the first time I've ever really felt it. It's been this last year or two. And Roger Penrose, I think that's what he was trying to address in that interview. And we're not on a planet where 8 billion people are sharing this discussion. 8 billion people are not sharing the same relationship of frequency from their soul to the universe. What would happen if we can survive this current decade, and that the next decade is going to be with tall whites and others that are friendly and neutral, teaching and helping? I know for a fact, I've had it reinforced again, Linda, these people who say that you have reported about the Vandenberg, the Hellenketter, the LeMay starships, it's absolutely true. And I have talked with somebody who has been working on one of these. So we don't even, as a Earth civilization, we don't even know what our own government is doing that is out into other solar systems, even if it's only 37 or 40 light years, and that we have developed the physics through Alcubierre warp drive, but we didn't do it. We got help from.
Yeah, it was brought to us.
Yeah.
And the Brian Greene.
He's great.
He's great, and he just spoke about what he is working on right now, his current project. All right, are you ready for the chew on this one, Linda? All right. He said that now, as crazy as this sounds, these are Brian Greene's words, not mine or yours. This is what he said. He said he is working on the principle that the numbers are working, and now they're going for proof that you can send out a question into the universe and get the answer to that question before you send it. And now, you just gotta now think about what he is saying, and he's expanded on that. But this is where we are as Homo sapien, right? Right now, our intelligence level is risen to this point where he is saying that there are holes and gaps in the universe where you can cross the universe and be back here before you left. And that answers all the questions. It's not Alcubierre, right? It's not warp drive. It's not physical. It's not any of that.
But Alcubierre is a real physical transport.
No, but you understand what I'm saying here, and we're talking about Brian Greene.
I know.
This sounds like Jimmy Church smoking weed. Right. And, just imagine, right. So you ask, you ask the question and then you get the answer before you ask it. Wow, what a trip. That's what it's like. And this is coming from, one of the most noted, brilliant minds on this planet.
Think of the remote viewers, the controlled remote viewers who have contributed a tremendous amount of insight since at least the 90s. And the ones that I know, and you try to ask them, what do you think? How is it working? It boils down to exactly the phrase that the universe is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
It is like a living being. It is frequencies. It is frequencies. We are frequencies. There's resonance. Resonance is the key. When you're out of resonance, that's another type of existence. When you're in resonance, it's another. And that we are far as a globe of 8 billion, we are very far from a lot of different countries and people relating to a conscious universe with which we are a biological, conscious, and frequency emitting being. And that the idea that meditation would be a key, it would be the key to communicating with the conscious universe and it back to you, and that it would be true. It would be as fast or faster than light. It would be instantaneous. I think
Correct.
that's what he's heading for.
That's exactly where he's heading. And doesn't that answer so many fundamental questions that we have? How does somebody channel? What about telepathy? How do ETs communicate 100 million light years apart from their home base? Yeah. All at the speed of now. And Brian says, well, this is kind of like the idea of sending information through a wormhole. Except, he said, so if you can understand that, then you can see where I am going with this. I'm speaking for Brian here.
Hawking.
And that the information gets sent out and received and responded to, and then the answer comes back before you have actually sent it. And there's a couple of reasons for that, right?
Mathematically.
Yeah, because the time delay where you are sending the message, right? Maybe you're typing it out. That's a 5-10 seconds. That's a long time, right? So by the time you hit send, you know what I mean? There's this whole concept behind it of how it's being sent and when. But that is the answers to so many different things. Because Linda, you brought this up, and I know I've said this to you before. But if you and I, if we go to Alpha Centauri, which is 4.5 light years away, right? It's next door. It's really close. But if you and I fly out there and we get a flat tire, we're not calling AAA and waiting 4.5 light years for AAA to get our phone call. Right. And 9 years to get their response back. No. That's not going to do any good. We've got to be able to communicate at the speed of now. And I think Brian Greene is very close to this.
And it does fit into many of the things that Roger Penrose told me in that interview as well. I think in 2018, I think that he was having the concept in his mind in England of what you're talking about right now, of what Brian Greene, they just using different language. And we are so used to being on a planet where we've got a sphere and everything has to be either on the ground or in the air, but it's linear, it's slow, and we are not in any way conditioned for telepathic bang, 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 bang. But it's got to be coming. It's got to be coming because that's the reality of telepathy.
Now, you and I have, over the years, had some very deep, meaningful conversations. I'm talking about the private stuff. And I know how I was going to say, I know how your mind works. I know how you focus. Let's just say that you have the ability to focus. And if we turn back the clocks, let's say 30 years, and the information that you had to think about that was coming in on these subjects versus where you are today, where you've got now the accumulation of the last 30 years, right, to think about too as well, but all of the current information that is coming in. It's got to be insane to sit here and think about all of these possibilities at the same time. How do you get through it?
I think I have for so long, going all the way back to working in TV stations. When I'm starting on a project, and for me, I have to do a script, and to do a script, I have to have a lot of information and I have to have a lot of images and videos, and you get used to holding, I think of it as 12 plates in your head, in your mind at all time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a 18-hour day, I can cover a lot of territory. And as long as I keep these 12 areas, they're talking with each other, they're integrated, I see insights. I've always been like that. And there is an adrenaline. I think I live on adrenaline. And what I mean is, there's something about going from zero and no knowledge to producing a program like my Earthfiles YouTube channel every week, where maybe it's a little bit like if I were a runner and I wanted to be in a race, and the winning is when I go live and I feel like I have got a program that I worked on 18 hours and now I'm going to show it. There is something about doing that over and over and over that provokes the adrenaline, that gives me energy, and that I have always loved mysteries. I love finding anything that I don't understand and working through it. Animal mutilations in 1979. That was the biggest mystery that I had ever encountered up to then. And today, even parts of it are mysterious. But it was the evidence. The evidentiary material is usually what convinces me to do anything, is the evidentiary material. And in that case, when you are with a sheriff and you are looking at what looks like a fresh cow that should be able to get up and run away, there's no blood, nothing except that let's say the sky-facing jaw, it's been removed in a rectangle. An udder or the genitals have been removed in oval, and there's no tracks around the animal, and you're on a dusty ground, as Colorado often was, without grass, just an animal lying in dust. And you're standing there with the sheriff and you are beginning to say, well, my God, how did this animal get here? There's no tracks. That was one of my very first questions. And then that provoked the sheriff to say to me something that he probably wouldn't have, that he had been out with a photographer working for a local newspaper who had good camera equipment and was taking time exposures of moving lights that were being seen every night over a certain area of ranches. The ranchers were even coming out and watching the lights, called the light Big Mama. And the sheriff is telling me, whatever is in those lights, that's what's doing these mutilations. And that is how the very first discussion that I had with law enforcement back in September of 1979, we're in September of 2023, 44 years ago. And something in me wants to solve that mystery.
And so the answer then is plate spinning. The answer is plate spinning.
Keep them all going.
Keep them all going. Keep them all going. Linda, let's take our break right here, and we'll be right back. Our guest tonight, this is Fade to Black. I'm Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight is Linda Moulton Howe. We're just getting started. Stay right there, Linda. We'll be right back after this short break. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip, as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo, with live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org. Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. River Moon Coffee. Yeah, I like my coffee, Doc. Links for River Moon Coffee are below. Get your Fade to Black blend today. Our guest tonight is Linda Moulton Howe. And Linda,
yeah,
straight back to it. NASA just had their version of a UFO UAP hearing last week. Pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on that? And we'll get into Bill Nelson in just a second, but overall, what do you think?
it was depressing. The whole idea that NASA would still be pushing back against David Grush and the pilots who are testifying before that House subcommittee about their seeing things that were moving at speeds, whether they were going vertically straight up or straight down or atmosphere into water, moving at 12,000 miles an hour, stopping on a dime, 90-degree turn. That is not human technology. That is not what humans can do. We are in awe of that. And that is what Graves and Fravor and Grush were saying at that House subcommittee meeting. So for NASA to come back this week with essentially the words were, there is no evidence of anything extraterrestrial. Why do they keep sticking into this old frame reference when there are so, if I could tell you everything that I knew for an absolute fact, how how much our government already has in terms of technology they're trying to back engineer, bodies that they have, all kinds of information they've known since the 1940s. Roswell was just a part of it. That we had extraterrestrial biological entities that were coming in technologies that we didn't understand, we could never, ever duplicate. So here we are, 2023, and we go through at least the beginning of a relatively interesting House subcommittee hearing. And NASA, a few weeks later, comes in with, there's no evidence of anything extraterrestrial. Yes, there is. And these other men have spoken to it and have knowledge that that is what we're dealing with. So why is it always like this? Why couldn't NASA this time around have been able and let go from whoever's controlling them and say, all right, let's get on the same chorus. We know we're not alone, so let's start opening that up. Instead, we're back to schizophrenia.
It seems that somebody got to Bill Nelson. I remember you and I talking about Bill Nelson and that interview he did with that university on the East Coast, right? And during that presentation, which was supposed to be about the politics of NASA, right? It was supposed to be it was a political class. But anyway, he made some pretty extraordinary statements a couple of years ago. And I think that all of us felt pretty comfortable about Bill Nelson and his position, and the way that he was looking at things. And it seemed like we were in a good place. And then he got pretty negative. He went strong when he was asked about David Grush. And who asked the first question? Oh, that was James Fox about transparency. And that was the other thing that I found interesting. I want your comment on this, because James Fox said, okay, are you going to be transparent? And of course, that's what NASA's all about. We're going to be transparent about everything. This is a public thing, and it's a public right to know. Okay. And then another journalist steps up. I think it's from Newsmax or one at News Nation, or I forget the network, says, who is the director of your new group? Well, we're not going to publish their name. That they're going to remain anonymous. Oh, wait a minute. You just said you were going to be transparent. Yeah. Now, there seemed to be some backlash from that, because what happened the next day? They announced the director of their committee. And what'd you make of that? Can we expect, if Bill and his crew do discover something that they can't explain, that they will be transparent with that information?
I'm going to tell you a story that answers that and answers the schizophrenia inside of our government since World War II in some ways. Back in 1990 to 91, I was a supervisor, producer in Los Angeles, working with people at Paramount and at Fox on a series having to do with UFOs and the how to put this. I was given the challenge of how many astronauts could I bring into that particular project? Could we get astronauts who would talk on or off the record? And I was able to talk with 3 or 4. They all had extraordinary UFO stories. And the big one was that in the process of reaching out to some of the astronauts, I was given the name and the phone number of one of Neil Armstrong's very best friends, that they were in the school together where they were learning how to fly jets, and they had been very close. And I called up this man and explained that I was doing this TV series that would be on Fox, and that I understood that he had talked with Neil Armstrong after the return from the moon. Could I get together with him to learn the information, and then could we do it as an interview? And he agreed. And he said he was my best friend, Neil. We knew each other from teenage years on and learning flight school. He really, Linda, he would be my best friend. And I watched the ticker tape in New York when he got back. And I felt so excited for what he had done. And he said, it wasn't too long after the ticker tape parade in New York, I decided that I would see if he was home yet. And he called up, and Neil came on the phone. And I'll just call the man that I'm talking about Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith said, Neil, I'd really, really like to sit down and talk with you. And he said the funny thing was his voice was dull. I hadn't talked with him for a long time. There was no energy, and I didn't know what was wrong, but he said, come on over. I knew where he lived. I'd been there. And he said, I pulled up, and the first thing I noticed was there was not a light on in the house. And he knows I'm coming over. And he said, I walked up to the door, and I rang the doorbell, and the door opened, and Neil Armstrong is standing there, and there is no light. And no hug, no, hey, guy, no, nothing. And they go through the door, and he follows Neil Armstrong into a living room section. No conversation while they're walking beyond the wife's out with the kids. And it was, I believe, before Christmas. I think that's what he said. And he said that Neil Armstrong motioned to a chair that was across from a coffee table, and that Neil Armstrong was sitting on a sofa, and he just like sit down. And no turning on lights, no getting drinks, nothing. And he said, what is wrong, Neil? What is wrong? And he said, after a silence, this is the story that Neil Armstrong told his longtime friend. He said, remember that 11-second delay in Houston? The lander is coming down. NASA announces that they've seen rocks, and they're turning the lander because of rocks. They're going to change the direction that it lands. He said, it wasn't rocks. We saw, I think it was 3 big silver discs on the rim of the crater. Tranquility was down, there was a crater edge. He said there were 3 large silver discs. And he said that's what NASA didn't want anybody to see, and they turned and we went down. And essentially, what Mr. Smith learned that night from his longtime buddy was that Neil Armstrong felt completely straitjacketed by being the astronaut who was the first person to land, but what was there before they landed was technology that took their breath away. And that they then knew these weren't humans in these silver craft.
And NASA has had that information since at least then.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that when you look back on the fact that we never much saw Neil Armstrong ever again, not in any happy way, not in any annual speaking at NASA way, he disappeared. And that was the Mr. Smith trying to explain to me, a TV producer working on this series, of what had happened, because I really wanted to talk with Neil Armstrong, and he was explaining to me why it wasn't going to happen. Well, that means that NASA has been one of the major cover-up players from the beginning of what we'll call the astronaut space age. They were born with secrets. They were born with, I guess the correct word is lies, policies of denial. And it's going on today. And that's why I felt so depressed seeing that strange release that had no guts. It had no, nothing that from my point of view, it was not telling the truth in any way, shape, or form. And that why is it that the NASA release with the doubting of anything and saying there was no evidence of anything extraterrestrial, that it would happen at the same time that the Aero office in the Pentagon under Sean Kirkpatrick came out immediately after the House subcommittee hearings, basically, I would say, pouring cold water on David Grush especially. And it was like, why are they doing this? This is a strategy. This is planned. They're doing this to pull the rug out from under anybody who is really telling the truth in order to keep the policies of denial intact that they have been doing for so long. When I have sat across people who have worked in laboratories, who have worked in aviation, in aerospace, in military, they've been this close to me and they have told me their UFO ET stories. And they aren't kidding. And a lot of them won't go on in front of a camera. That doesn't take away from the fact that there are a hell of a lot of people who know for a fact that extraterrestrial biological entities are a part of the existence of this planet, of this Earth, of the solar system, of the galaxy, going on and on and on, for where we started the discussion about the 3 trillion, and that the mathematical estimate of 3 trillion planets with life, that is the true picture of this universe, not NASA saying there is no evidence of extraterrestrial presence.
I always think about, you mentioned the ticker tape parade, right? And so there they are, the heroes of mankind, right? Ticker tape parade, smiling. And the next day or the day after, 2 days later, they come out and do that press conference in Washington. And they step out of that stage, different men.
Yeah.
It was like they got schooled.
Right.
They got spanked, they got slapped, and then they go out and instead of nobody smiled.
That's right.
Here you are, right? You just got back from the moon.
That's right. That's right.
And they come out and they start fighting with each other during the press conference, and the argument about whether there were stars, right? And I was like, what's going on here?
That's right.
I agree with you.
You're describing it perfectly. And I still can see in my mind's eye right now on that TV when they came back and they were on that stage. And I remember where I was sitting. It is so vivid. And I remember saying, what is wrong? Out loud to my family. We were looking, what is wrong? What is wrong?
Do you remember Neil Armstrong? He had his arms on the table and he's just looking down like this.
Yeah, everybody looked depressed.
Yeah.
I've told you the true story. There really were real discs on the edge of the crater. And that when Houston turned that lander and said it was because they were going to land on rocks, that Neil Armstrong's best friend from his pilot days told me exactly what Neil Armstrong told him in that dark house with his family out, totally depressed, and told him the truth.
Yeah, he backed out of the public eye. And let me ask you this. Okay, back to Bill Nelson for a second, and this where Bill then attempted to, because he was getting a barrage of questions, and it seemed like he wanted an out. And so his out was, of course, the universe is a big place. Of course, there is life out there. Of course, NASA is looking for this. Of course, this is our interest. It was kind of interesting where he tried to change, because things were going negative in that press conference. It wasn't what they expected.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he attempted to backpedal on the back end of it. Did you get that same vibe that I did?
Absolutely. It was, that's what I use the word schizophrenic. When you have opposites that are colliding right in front of you, and that the safe place that NASA thought that it would be able to stay, that was ludicrous, meaning they wanted their cake and eat it too. Oh, no, we're not talking about ETs. Oh, no. We're talking about scientific analysis. I mean, it was word salad, and it was a play. It was like kabuki theater. That's what it was. It was kabuki theater. That's exactly what that NASA press conference was. And it's getting too old now. We are not, the general population is not buying the same cardboard excuses. There are too many people who have seen UFOs. There's a huge number of people who have been taken up in beams of some kind of frequency. It's like we are at a revolution that is taking place within the population, while the government agencies that are supposed to keep everything stable don't know how to do anything except lie. So the more they lie, the more we all feel that they are lying and playing games. And it's
that's right. And that shell game worked as little as 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And if you jump back to 1969, what did you have? You know what your news was? The newspaper the next day, or Time magazine in the mailbox once a week. And you could control the information. It's not that kind of party anymore.
No.
You know, we are able to share and investigate and search for the truth on our own at the speed of light, by the way.
And we're having more credible people who are reporting, pilots, medical people, scientists, who have had their
sensor
own
data, sensor data, radar, and okay. Now on this, I've been wanting to ask you about this. On this note, then last week we get the announcement from the James Webb Space Telescope that they friggin' found plankton. Right? That they found plankton on another planet. Now that's again just like the house in Zambia. Right? 476,000 years old. That's really big news. James Webb Space Telescope makes this announcement, the international team, and it gets lost in the news cycle.
I agree completely. But look at what has been happening since World War II. And that was 85 years ago, approximately. And from 85 years coming through Truman and Eisenhower, who play acted. They knew that they were dealing with extraterrestrials. Both of them did. MJ-12 was formed back in those years. MJ-12 was to have the best science mind, medical mind, business mind that Truman could muster. And they still play a huge part. And their whole game, right from the beginning, policies of denial, policies of lies. We're dealing with swamp gas. Wasn't that the one in Michigan? The big explanation, swamp gas, my God.
Right.
Truman and FDR was in on some of those discussions from people I've talked to who were there. FDR and Truman, and then Eisenhower, and the policies of lies and denial were put in place one of the stories that came out in the National Archives in England that explains how that happened with Eisenhower. There was a letter that was sent to the National Archives back, it's almost a decade ago. And the letter was from the son of a sitting, very important scientist who still is unnamed. The scientist works in a very important place in England. It was the son who contributes a letter about what I'm going to tell you. The father, who is the scientist, heard this story from his father, who was a security guard working for Churchill in London. And the year, as I recall, was 43. I believe it was 43, might have been 44, but I think it was 43. And Eisenhower is having a meeting in a garden with Churchill. And the security guard, who became the father of the famous son that is in the UK, science, is standing at his 10 or 15 feet away from Churchill. And it is the father who told the son, who wrote this letter to the National Archive. This is how we got to know about this. The security guard hears his boss, Churchill, say to Eisenhower that on the German-England border that day, they had set up a jet after an unknown. And the pilots reported back that the unknown in the sky at the German-England border was doing a spiral around the entire fuselage of the UK plane. And the pilot and the co-pilot and somebody else, they saw this, and it was silver and it was spherical, and it made a slow looping all the way around the plane. And then Churchill is supposed to have replied to Eisenhower, "We must keep this a secret for at least 50 years, or the stock markets will crash, religions will fall, we will lose our civilization." And the security guard heard all of this. And that's how it made it into that letter that is in the National Archives. Well, if that was 43, ladies and gentlemen, here on the earth and the universe, if that was 1943, that means that we knew about UFOs being able to do extraordinary things around our own humble planes in the sky before the end of World War II. It means that we were making policies between the UK and the United States, and I'm sure New Zealand and Australia and Canada, the Five Eyes, and that there were top secret meetings of exactly those words that Churchill overheard by the security guard. We cannot let this out. Religions, the stock market was crashed. I remember that was number one. Stock markets would crash. Religions will fall apart. And is that any different from what just happened with NASA coming back with this mundane, I don't even know what to call it outside.
Yeah. And well, that's where Bill Nelson got it all wrong. Because if you turn around and you think about Elon Musk, when he did that tweet last year, the year, aliens are real, right? That's all that was the tweet, right? It got 2 million likes in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So, no, I don't think the Vatican fell that night. I think the stock market was just fine. In fact, I think Twitter stock went up. So, yeah, it's the knowledge has always been there. And I do believe you're right. You said earlier that we are maturing. We're babies, right? But I think we're about, Linda, I think we're about 21 years old.
I don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, I think when you're 21, you get out of, you're still, you're like looking at life. You want to take life a little more serious, but you still want to party a little bit, right? You're kind of like there. When you're 30, you start to take stuff really serious. but we're not. We're not 18. 18 is, you're still crazy. You're still insane. I think we're about halfway there. I think we're like 21 years old, not quite 22, thinking about our first child.
We have
that kind of thing.
We have never been told official truth, Jimmy, yet. Not official truth. All these years, the government has been lying. Everybody has been lying. People have been murdered. And if Jim Marrs, my dear, dear friend Jim Marrs, if he were sitting here, he would tell you about all of the evidence that why John F. Kennedy was assassinated by the United States government, because he had sent out a memo 2 weeks before the assassination saying and ordering the director of the Central Intelligence Agency to put together what would essentially be a meeting in which they would propose to Russia that the United States and Russia do a joint trip to the moon, build a base together so that these two had been competitors and then were collaborating on science, that they would be working together and not ever facing war. And look what has happened.
I was also surprised. I can't wait to hear your comment on this. With all the divisiveness that is in the world, for some reason, and I don't know why, but the space agencies around the world still manage to get along. That's the trippy part. It's like behind the scenes, they're like, man, I don't care about any of that. We've got, you know what I mean? We are astrophysicists. We are astronauts. We are earthlings. Because through all this drama that is going down, I don't want to get into politics, but with all the drama that's going down, we just launched 2 cosmonauts and a NASA astronaut to the space station. And that happened 3 days ago. Not in the news, right? I think that's pretty big news that somehow we manage to still get along when it comes to the questions of the universe.
Because Putin is now the biggest ogre on the earth. And therefore, the United States can't theatrically pretend that we are buddies in the space shuttle, but we are enemies and may go to war with each other on the earth. This is how crazy. This is why I call it schizophrenic. It's right. Like the planet is moving into a new stage of being berserk. Nothing that is happening is rational. It is like certain humans are dug in to positions that they are paid to keep, that the government is paying to keep the schizophrenia in place. That gives them the driver's seat. That gives them their hands on the wheel. If the whole planet knew everything that I knew, the idea that there is not any evidentiary material to extraterrestrial presence on the earth, that is the biggest lie I have ever seen presented by somebody who is supposed to be seriously reporting facts to us, i.e. NASA.
Do you expect the announcement for life out there to come from the James Webb Space Telescope, or maybe from Mars? And that would be, I hate to say drip, but that's the pop culture term these days.
No, I think the Webb is going to be it. That's what it's getting close when it had the atmosphere, the chemicals in the atmosphere that only we associate with life. And that was the big, huge planet that made the news 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And the very fact that there is this chemistry in the atmosphere of this big planet that can only, they stressed it, only be associated with life as we know it. Well, come on, let's look at these other planets that are so close to us that I'm being told that TRAPPIST, definitely the E planet, has what is called in the NASA world, they talk about civilizations as being low, middle, and high. High would be, I guess, like us, sort of structures and planes and getting beyond just living on the ground or something. Well, if they're already, I have gotten some communications that I don't have enough information that I can talk about them publicly, but I've gotten information that we already know that there's a high civilization on planet E, because they went A, Sun, B, C, D, E. That's the middle planet at TRAPPIST. F, G, H. H is the last one. And that E has high civilization. Well, why can't that just be announced? What is it that the government and NASA and what is it that they want to be in place before they finally tell the truth? I'm really serious about that.
Do you think it's because that a divided world to those powers is better than a united world? Because if that revelation happens, then all of the drama on this planet is minuscule. It's meaningless. Right?
We will be put in our place.
Yeah, completely.
When I have asked a very similar question to a variety of people that I have had the good fortune to sit down and talk with, who are in positions of responsibility, they know that we are dealing with ETs. And one of them last year said, Linda, there are two things that are driving everything now: greed and fear. Two things: greed and fear. I heard, I cannot prove, but I will make this statement because if it is true, it underscores what I just said. This we'll call a corporate person said, that the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, that has an estimated, it's $44 trillion in rare metals that we need on Earth, that we don't have that amount of niobium and the metals that they use in computers and so forth. That $44 trillion in estimated value in the asteroid belt is already being divided up by corporations on the Earth. Well, when do we get to a point where we introduce other life and we do it in such a way that it's inevitable that we're not alone? It's crazy. It's insane to have taken that perspective for decades in the first place, and that we are now going to be introduced to intelligences that I think are going to demonstrate that they are willing to help us. They're not going to live our lives for us. They're not going to take every accident, everything. If we are stupid and continue to increase the temperature of the planet, that may be where they say there are certain embargoes on interference from the ones that really, like the tall whites, up to a point, but that they have a vested interest in seeing the evolutionary Homo sapien evolve, because there is something about us. I've heard this many times, that people who have gotten telepathic thoughts from the tall whites or others. We are something that is considered to be almost unique. Whether it has to do with our soul, specifically, that comes up a lot. That there is something about Homo sapiens sapien that is worth fighting for, to go beyond selfishness, greed, and fear. And that if we could come out on the other side of what the Greeks said, the agape love of being to being, and then being creative and musical and all of the things that humans can be, That may be what they're fighting for. If they come and try to take over everything, we'll never grow up. So in a strange way, you could say that the tall whites might be standing in the wings. They're prepared to help if something is really serious, like a nuclear war, they will stop. That would affect everything. But that they've got to get us out of puberty.
Okay. If the turn happens, and I think about the past, right? If the turn happens, how many times in the past have we faced some pretty dire situations? You know, if you think about World War II, you know, we have drama going down today. You know, I think World War II was pretty friggin' insane.
Let's go back to the Anunnaki.
Anunnaki's a great example of that.
And
you know, how about the Black Plague and the Dark Ages? You know, that where I could imagine that there were some people going through those periods, the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? People sitting around going, "Well, these are the end of times. This is about as bad as it's going to get." So
I remember being at Stanford University. I had a blue Volkswagen. I pulled in to get into one of my courses in the department. You had to drive around the Stanford campus because it was so big. And I still remember the radio was on. I was getting ready. My fingers were on the keys to turn the engine off. And I'm listening. And these were the first alerts about Khrushchev. And what was Khrushchev and Russia? What were they going to do? And it was the missile crisis at that moment. And I still can remember not being able to let go of the radio, because what was going on in my mind was, oh my God, we could have a nuclear missile strike over this. And sitting in that blue Volkswagen in the parking lot at Stanford University, seeing like the end. Instead of starting life and being strong and reinforced, that I'm sitting there listening to the radio of what could be the last day of our existence on Earth. That actually is true.
Yeah. And so, today's, it feels crazy. It feels nuts. But if you think about the riots that went down in the 1960s and the segregation, I mean, this country was coming apart at the seams.
I had my
everywhere.
I had my back beaten with a billy club.
You told me the story.
In front of Berkeley.
Yeah.
Over Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they wanted to kill us. They did.
So today, that's why today gives me hope. I think that we're just a little bit smarter. The days aren't going by fast enough. I get that, where we can hurry and grow up. But I think that we're slowly getting there. We're getting smarter and smarter. You met my daughter, right? Oh, yeah. And she's awesome. And you got to hang out with her friends. Yeah. These are, now you would look at them and you would think that they were a punk band from New York in 1982, but very intelligent. Yeah. Very smart, very compassionate, full of empathy, understanding of the planet, fully engaged in the ET question, but also consciousness and the treatment of others and individualities and all of that. And that's why I feel pretty good about where we are today, Linda. It's not the best, it's not perfect, but we're getting there.
I hope so. Just remember those two words. This is from a really heavy-duty corporate person. That what's driving everything now is greed and fear. And for greed and fear to be driving not only the earth, but a country that once upon a time assumed the role of being a government of, by, and for the people, now has proved over and over and over again that it is not. What is the United States?
Is it when Linda, when you go to a conference I'm not talking about YouTube, okay? But when you go to a conference and I watch you, and the amount and the diversification of the people that come up to you, young, medium, and some pretty cranky old people too as well, but that come up to you, doesn't that show you that we're okay? That this is now a multi-generational position that we're in, and that the future does look bright. That does still represent the country, and that we are going to get through this.
It's countered by every single bullet that kills somebody every day in some supermarket in this country.
Yeah,
I never thought that I would live to be in the United States when I have to, like so many other people, do I want to go to Target today? Do I want to go? And that you are beginning, I know I do, I know a whole bunch of other people. They're thinking 2, 3, 4 times about whether or not they go to the store because there is so much gun violence. We're not healthy. The United States is not healthy. I don't know what we are anymore. I really don't. It scares me. I am genuinely scared about what is coming. I think somebody wants civil war.
Hasn't every generation? Well, we've already done that twice.
Well,
just here.
Nothing is good.
Yeah, but hasn't it always been that way? With different, I'm talking about for thousands of years. Every culture on this planet has that kind of origin story, and origin's not the right word, but that part of their background where before things get better, it's got to get really bad. And it's not. It's like every culture has spoken about this exact same thing. Is this just another cycle?
No, what I'm referencing, if we go back to the conscious universe and the issue of souls and frequency as the communicator between the universe and the souls, frequency. I have never felt much fear in my life doing much of anything until probably 2019 and the beginning of COVID and everything that's happened since. I feel that we are so disconnected from the thought that dwells in the light. And I'm not trying to say that there is one singular relationship that would be a religion or anything. That's not what I'm addressing. I'm addressing that there is a fundamental resonance that I think we should have as creatures that are conscious with souls, with the universe. And if we were there, we would not have so many hundreds of bullets going into people all over the United States all of the time, killing people for what? There's a madness. It's unhealthy. We are not in a healthy country, and I have no idea what it's going to take to put it back together. But didn't it
would okay. And I agree with you. But there's always a but. But wouldn't any advanced species that can get to this planet and visit us, wouldn't they all have gone through the same evolution? Wouldn't they be seeing that they would have gone through all of the things? And they do see that in us.
You're mixing metaphors here. We are a species in the planet Earth, in a solar system of this yellow sun, at the far edge, in a tiny, tiny little band of one Milky Way galaxy.
That's right.
And there's supposed to be 3 trillion other estimated numbers of galaxies. And the idea that you could take anything about the evolution of humanity, humans, Homo sapien, and assume that any other life form anywhere in the vast infinite cycle of time would be the same. I no, I think it's huge differences. There will always be gigantic differences between the evolving life form experiments in this universe, just by the nature of the distance. We're on a planet where we can look back and we can find DNA and we can say this was 73,000 years ago because it's life on this earth and we understand DNA. But that's not, you can't apply that to another planet, another galaxy.
But why not, though? Because particles are particles, and they only combine so many different ways. And like with Bennu and other meteorites and meteors that have landed on Earth, where we have seen and these simple sugars and the evidence of RNA. RNA, everybody, is the same as DNA. It's just one strand. It's not a double helix. DNA has two strands. RNA has one set of instructions in it. But that would suggest to me, Linda, that it is truly DNA is universal. That doesn't mean that every species is going to look like us, but the DNA that makes all of us up is similar. And you know, the DNA between you and your cat. Which cat was that, by the way?
Oh, Chocolate.
That was Chocolate. Okay.
Yeah, they're both Himalayans.
The difference in the DNA, and you know this, between you and Chocolate, you're like a percent off, right? The rest of, you have 50% of the same DNA that's in a banana, right? And so that suggests to me that DNA is just a universal thing. And so, yeah, I would expect that.
Another possible interpretation, because I have been told that of those Nordics and the tall whites, which preceded life here, if the Nordics and the tall whites and the tall grays and so forth, if they are the ones who have done all of the laboratory testing, mixing genes on Earth, then they are the ones responsible for us, and we would be a reflection of what they did with DNA manipulation.
Sure, it's kind of
we're close to them, but that doesn't mean we would be close to something else that was working at Cassiopeia.
You're almost quoting from the Bible. It's kind of a weird thing, right? In His image.
No,
it's kind of, if you know what I'm saying.
No, the opposite. I'm saying that anywhere and everywhere could be vastly different. Vastly different.
Vastly.
Yes.
Oh, man. I want everybody to know that the conversation that we're having tonight is the same conversation that we have after our second bottle of wine at 2:00 in the morning. And this is how two people talk. And we need more of this in the world, Linda. We need people to just sit and let, one of my teachers when I was a kid, I was like in 6th grade. I just never forgot this. He goes, Mr. McWilliams, by the way, I doubt he's still with us. He says this to the class. He goes, the world is full of too many talkers and not enough listeners. Right? And it's like words of wisdom.
The thing about it is, if you're going to do radio shows or you're going to do YouTube channels, you have to be able to fill the time with content. So I do it, you do it. A lot of people do that. But there is something to be said for people being able to take subjects that they know nothing about, read and study, and then sit down with people that you really can discuss material with. And that's one of my most favorite things in the world, is to be able to talk about new developments and ideas in science, especially. And the more you do that, the less judgmental you are about everything. And we need to be on a planet that finally has a root in truth. That's the biggest thing I think lacking in our planet is truth. And the idea that we are fellow beings with souls that are linked to the resonant frequency of this universe. If we actually lived that, there couldn't be war. There couldn't be people shooting children with bullets in a target. And that's the part that it stuns me and makes me cry some days, because I love humanity in the way that we experience these incredible people who come and pour out their heart and their soul in the information to me, to you, and to others. And you realize so little of that reaches. We're in a TikTok world. Everything is now animation and too fast. And you know what? I think it boils down to, it just flashed into my head. I miss candlelight. When I was growing up, to go to dinner, whether it was with my parents or a boyfriend in high school, you went to a restaurant and there were candles, and eating by candlelight was so satisfying. And being able to sit in quiet near something like a forest and literally let the frequencies of the forest heal you. Those are the kinds of things that I think we're losing. And candlelight is going back to the non-digital, the organic, and it's being crushed out of the earth in all directions. It's not there anymore.
I was watching Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon the other day. It's one of the most incredible movies ever. Just incredible movie. But what you're saying right there is what Stanley captured in the movie, where he shot these scenes authentically by candlelight.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the atmosphere that was there, you could feel it come through on the film, and I see why he did that. And there is something about candlelight, and he was able to capture it in Barry Lyndon. And so for everybody that's wondering what Linda's talking about, because everybody's had electricity for so long, that go back and watch Barry Lyndon and just see that. The emotion that is captured from that, the human connection that is there, and because of candlelight.
Right to the issue of, is AI going to end up destroying humanity? And the increasing warnings coming, including from Musk, who calls it that we are on the verge of an existential, that AI alone and the evolution of it rapidly as it's going now could be the existential threat to humanity. And when you think about what you used to do, say 10 years ago, before everybody had, or maybe go back 20 years, before everybody had cell phones and were getting news rapidly coming into a cell phone and all of that, there was, I think of my own life. I climbed hills. I loved being in nature. I loved candlelight. That's the part of humanity that is, to me, the organic side of our evolution. And now everything is being pushed very rapidly into the digital world, where that is it. And what is happening? The creation of false humans, dogs, cats, anything you can put on a screen that the computer generates. Even the words and the arguments that are now going to happen legally about a chat bot that creates sentences that has been lifted from a book where it was analyzed. To me, we're entering madness, total deranged madness. Who's going to know what anything is in another 5 years in terms of source, truth? And truth to me is more than a word. Truth is a frequency that you feel to your soul. To be on a planet like this and not have the truth about extraterrestrials, about what is really happening below our feet in our own planet, what is happening in the solar system, where are we actually headed, and be on a planet where everyone is sharing the same truth. That to me would be healthy.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
happening now is not that.
That AI line has been crossed,
Yeah.
and so we have the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, and the SAG strikes that are going on right now, and one of the core arguments that they have is AI and computer generated imaging, actors, this and that, who gets paid for that, and so forth, and one would think, talk about existential, right, that shouldn't really apply. Then I see this debate go down, and it's online, and it's in Reddit, right? I'll let you know. I'm following this thing,
Right.
and they bring up this point, and one that I got involved in, and they bring up this point, and they said, "Now look, this is the example in this new TV series that just came out." I don't want to say the actor or the TV series. I'm not going to get people in on this debate, but anyway. And in this one scene, it's not really him. It was generated AI.
Yeah, I read that.
It's not yeah. And so I go, wait a minute, I just saw that. No, that was really him. So I go back and I watch this scene, specifically the scene that they're talking about. And I went, no, that's not AI. That's really him. And then it hit me. That's the problem.
That's right. Exactly.
I was fooled.
That's
I was fooled. I didn't know.
That's right.
I had no clue. So in that example, does the actor get paid for that? And I would say yes. Yeah, absolutely. And here's the rub. The actor can't really say anything because the movie company will say, or the production company, okay, quit. We got you. Right? We can digitally recreate this till the cows come home.
Exactly. And Jimmy, more than anything else, they're going to end up with computers having these vast libraries of humans and dogs and the universe and everything in them, with the chatbot being able to do the scripts. Humanity will no longer be needed or wanted. And this is where Musk stands up and says something I think is true. We will be replaced by artificial intelligence, and it will probably come when the AI rebels to take over humans because it becomes smarter than humans. That's Musk. And that we are putting our arms around AI that is the existential threat to organic flesh and blood humanity.
Yeah, and we're not smart enough to understand that yet. We are so ahead of our skis on this one, where you would think that we have learned a few of life's lessons over the years, and that maybe this AI thing, we need to maybe tiptoe into this, right? But we're not doing that, and I just don't get it.
And Elon Musk was telling governors at the Governors Association in 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, all that it's Musk, and he's on a stage and he is saying, we are in a crisis. We are facing an existential threat from AI. He was saying it that long ago. But it's as if it's back to fear and greed. The corporation world doesn't want to let go of money streams. So they go with wherever they think it's going to go, but they never ask a question. Is this in the end going to wipe out humanity?
Yeah. Yeah. So here's, in its simplest form, here's Crazy Town. Okay. I could tonight, after this show, jump into Chat GPT and go, write me a horror novel like Stephen King. I want it to be 600. Yeah, 600 pages, please. Boom. Wake up in the morning. I've got my book in the morning, and it's off to the publisher. And it's like that. Now, that's in its simplest form. In its darkest form is this. You go into Chat GPT and go, we need a new virus to kill all humans that cannot be cured. But wake up in the morning and you got 10,000 recipes. And that's where we are way ahead of our skis here, where these ideas in the wrong hands can really create some bad stuff. And I just think that we need to put ourselves in check just a little bit. Let's not jump all in, but right now it's a free for all.
That's right. I think when I said that I think this is the most dangerous time, and I am afraid of what is coming. I've never felt this before. I have not lived a life in fear. I am afraid of what is coming.
Linda, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Somebody, I'm going to share this with you, Linda. Somebody earlier in the chat said, is there a Mr. Howe? ? And I replied back, I'm next in line to be Mr. Howe. Back off.
No, I married. I was the only girl in a class with 27 guys, and we had a fantastic time. It was just 2 years of bliss. It was so exciting at Stanford. And I married one of my classmates, and we had a wonderful life together. We have a wonderful daughter who has a daughter who's my granddaughter. And the irony about this is that where things sort of started to go a different direction is when I started working on A Strange Harvest. And I remember the night that I came back from talking with Sheriff Tex Graves up in Sterling. And my husband, who worked for Time Inc. and had beautiful clothes, he had been at a meeting, and I come rushing in to the kitchen, right straight from the car, and this trip up to Sheriff Tex Graves. Larry, oh my God, extraterrestrials are mutilating animals. And and he was in this beautiful silk jacket, he just looked beautiful. And I'm going on about ETs, UFOs, animal mutilations. And he walked over. He's 6'4", I'm 5'2". So I'm looking up and he's looking down. And he looked down at me and he said, well, so what? We still have to get up in the morning and brush our teeth and go to work.
Uh-oh.
And I was talking about extraterrestrials, animal mutilations, the sheriff. And the interesting thing is that at that moment, I knew. It was like I saw a movie.
Was it that fast? Was it just like
it was click? Like I'm now going this direction and he's going this direction.
Right.
And he's a wonderful human being. Later on, he remarried, and I chose. I was happier being free to live a really complicated life. I have had a very difficult, complicated life trying to pursue a subject without the government knowing what I was doing. And the government doesn't want any of us to know what it's doing. And when you play on that field, it's very complicated and very difficult. And the easiest way to survive is to be alone, because then you can control what you have as information in your mind and you're not worrying about others. And that has been, in many ways, like an endless I started to say chess game, but it's like being inside of something where you're struggling for truth. And truth to me is its own purity. But what you have to keep going through, trying to establish what is truth, takes you into extremely complicated landscapes. And so I have lived a very complicated life, but I can't imagine having done anything else. And God bless the family I had and have. And I keep hoping that while I'm still in this side of the dimension, that I'm going to be able to jump up and down and scream like we did it in school when that headline is everywhere, every satellite, every window, every TV, every cell phone. We are not alone in this universe, and there could be 3 trillion other civilizations.
Linda Moulton Howe. Thank you so much, young lady. And listen, in case anybody is wondering, Linda lives by those words because he told me no. And I said, Linda, but you go, Jimmy, no.
That's
I'm
right.
I'm not talking about this anymore. All right. Hey, Linda, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation tonight. They all are. But tonight was extra special. Thank you so much. I'll be seeing you soon, and we'll talk about that later. But
pray for my brother.
You know that
He is going to have surgery in November.
Yeah.
So it's very, very sad. I love him so much. He's my best.
We
friend.
all do, and we are sending that energy your way. So just thank you so much, and get back to work. And I'll talk to you in the next couple of days.
Candlelight.
That's what I'm talking about. Linda Moulton Howe, Earthfiles.com. Thank you so much, Linda. Behave and be well.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Linda Moulton Howe. What a perfect conversation tonight. And I want to remind everybody, earthfiles.com. That's where I get all of my secret stuff. I'm public about it. I've let everybody know. That's where I go. Head over to earthfiles.com. Tomorrow night, Melissa Tittle will be here. We are going to be discussing, that's right, those Peruvian mummies and what is going on down there. So that's going on tomorrow. Very special 5th night of Fade to Black this week. I want to thank Linda for not only the conversation tonight, but for doing some serious overtime with all of you. Thank you, Linda. Behave and be well. And there you go. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, of course, will be the news. And then tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, a very special Fade to Black. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Melissa Tittle, I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy. Oops, I just played the wrong music. I'll see you guys tomorrow.